Hi, I'm Kat and today I have for you a true crime case, and I will also be translating a word from Romanian into English. So let's start with the word in Romanian for today. This is quite a complicated one, so I'm hoping you can get it. Rețea de socializare. Rețea de socializare. Rețea de socializare. Rețea de socializare. Well done, guys, you just said social media. On 4th of May 2021, just before 4:45 a.m. in the Great Lever area of Bolton, United Kingdom, Reece Tansey was stabbed to death with a knife. He was only 15 years old. He was stabbed 6 times. 2 of the stabs were inflicted with such force that they each cut a piece of bone, and one had detached a piece of rib bone. Boy A, now known as James White, stabbed Reece, and Boy B, now known as Mark Nuttall, encouraged James to attack him. The attackers were 14 and 15 years old. All 3 of them were basically kids, and most importantly, the victim was only 15 years old. His mother and father have lost a much-loved son, and the child, even younger than Reece, lost an idolized big brother. Reece Tansey was a 15-year-old teenager who lived in Bolton. He was born on 12th of September 2005 to Laura Tansey and Ian Nice. His parents have separated after being together for 18 years. Reece also had a younger brother, Tyrone, who looked up to him and misses him dearly. Reece attended Harper Green High School along with his 2 attackers, James and Mark. Reece was described as just loving everyone. He couldn't see anything wrong in anybody. He was a funny, cheeky boy who always wanted a laugh, and he was always there for his friends. He was down to earth and he would make everyone laugh. He was really protective of his mom and younger brother, seeing himself as the man of the house, and his dad saw him as his best friend. Reece was his family's entire world. He loved the color green and doing stunts on his bike. So let's see, how did we get here? In the days or weeks leading up to 4th of May, there was an ongoing disagreement between Mark Nuttall and another boy only known as H. In this disagreement, James White was siding with Mark. Reece was siding with H. I have to point out that as far as I am aware, the disagreement and most of the chats were happening online. As a result of this beef between the 3 boys, James and Mark arranged a real-life fight with H and Reece, using mainly Snapchat to arrange it, sending and receiving messages from around 1:30 a.m. on the night of 4th of May. During the night, James and Mark both left their homes separately, and they were on their way to confronting Reece. Reece's mother had no idea that he was going out. She was under the assumption that he was in his room sleeping. The other boy, H, in the end decided that he wasn't going to leave his house after all, so he didn't go to the fight. It was meant to be 2 against 2. However, Reece decided to go on his own. He knew that he will be alone against 2, and he knew that he will get beat up, but he also knew that if he doesn't go, everybody on social media will end up calling him a pussy for not doing it. For Reece, he would lose if he went, and he would lose if he didn't. But little did Reece know that in those early hours of the morning, he would lose his life. James White was the one who took the leading role in pushing Reece to this fight. Using Snapchat, he threatened Reece with violence, using obscene and humiliating language towards him. Around 2 hours before his death, Snapchat messages revealed that James told Reece he would make him beg for his life, even asking him 7 times where he was. Even though all of these boys, they went together to the same high school, they didn't actually know each other apart from on Snapchat. That is, Reece didn't know the two boys who attacked him other than online. Maybe that they knew they are going to the same high school, but they didn't really, have any kind of interaction at school. To make sure that he can find out where Reece lived, James even asked him to turn on his location on Snapchat so that he can track him. At around 3:10 a.m., around an hour and a half before Reece was killed, James messaged him to say that neither he nor Mark, the other boy, had any knives with them and this would be a fist fight. But when James left home, he took 2 knives from his kitchen, one for himself and another one for Mark. He didn't tell Reece about any knives, probably because he wanted both of the boys to win the fight against Reece. Okay, so let's see, who is this James White? James White was born on 8th of November 2005 and he lived in Farnworth, Bolton. He was 15 years old at the time of this attack. He has been diagnosed with ADHD and other mixed disorders of conduct and emotions. He had a history of exclusion from school at an early age. So we know that James was pushing Reece to go to this fight, even threatening violence via Snapchat, but it wasn't only James doing it. Mark Nuttall also threatened him with violence, saying that he would slice him up if needed. He also asked Reece to turn on his location, even asking a mutual friend where Reece was. At 2:55 a.m., Mark sent a Snapchat message saying, quote, "Lad, I'll record it." That message is consistent with a plan for a one-on-one fist fight between James and Reece, with Mark recording it to later share on social media in the same way that his other online friends would share videos of other fights. So you can kind of see where this is going, right? You've got teen boys bragging online about doing this or doing that, recording fights, then sharing them on social media for even more bragging, and obviously portraying themselves as these tough, scary, to be feared guys, right? The only problem is that nowadays kids, teenagers, take what they see online and they do it in real life. It's not how it was at the beginning of social media, where you can just be anybody online, say things online to others, kind of like building your online persona, but you are nothing like that in real life. Nowadays the line between online and real life is kind of blurred. I think it's safe to say that whatever someone says online nowadays has to be taken very seriously. As I myself like to say, when you are hiding behind a keyboard, it's easier for you to say the things that you wouldn't in person. And more often than not, you are more open online because you are basically opening up to strangers and you can be more honest without the fear of judgment. Now remember H, the other boy who was supposed to join this fight, which would have made it 2-on-2 fight? Well, Reece tried to persuade H to go with him, but Reece sent Snapchat messages more than 1 hour before the attack saying that it would be a 2-on-1 fight and that he was going on his own. So it was clear that H didn't want to do this anymore and they all knew it.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get banged out, 2-on-1. Because they were like, oh, put it all on the story that you're not coming. Well, I ain't getting called if not coming.
At around 4 a.m., James and Mark met up and they were walking towards Bradford Road. A few minutes later, Mark spoke with Reece on the phone. From what can be heard on CCTV audio, Mark told Reece that he was going to record him getting smashed up. During the course of the Snapchat messages on that night, some of what Reece said to either or both of the boys was, yes, you could say quite aggressive. He also threatened violence against both of the boys, but Reece's messages didn't really show that he wanted a serious fight. It could have been that his messages were, those of a scared boy who was simply just trying to scare them off from fighting him. He already knew that he was on his own and he knew that he will get beat up And let's be honest, anyone would be scared, right? But they don't really want to show it. Typical teens, boys, men, women, really, it's just, human nature. Because of Reece's age, however, he gave in to the peer pressure to fight. And we all know peer pressure is the worst. That's how you have kids carrying knives, organizing fights, vaping, drinking, taking drugs, smoking, and so on. Peer pressure is a big deal.
Get a beating, you can still have a bit of street credibility.
James and Mark ended up confronting Reece on the corner of Walker Avenue. James got the two knives to the scene, arming Mark with one knife. Reece was unarmed. It's not exactly clear, but it appears that Reece was trying to fight off one of the boys and he then ran away, but James and Mark chased him. James caught with Reece quite quickly, with Mark lagging behind. Both James and Mark were holding knives in their hands as they were chasing Reece. James, as soon as he caught up with Reece, attacked him with a knife. Reece was able to run away, but James caught up again and for a second time attacked him with a knife. It seems that James said he didn't think he stabbed Reece because of his thick jacket and he couldn't really feel that he stabbed him, so he stabbed some more to make sure that he injures him. Reece managed to get away, but James pursued him into a front garden. At this point, Mark, the other boy, slowed down and he didn't go into this garden. Reece and James ran through two gardens and they ended up back onto the street. Mark also ran, but he was still lagging behind. By this point, Reece had fallen to the ground in the middle of the road, but James caught up with him again. While Reece was down on all fours facing the ground, James attacked him with a knife for a third time and fell to the ground himself. Mark ran towards them, but he stayed on the pavement a short distance away. Given that distance and his lagging behind, he probably didn't really want to get physically involved in the fight. Fatally injured at this point after being stabbed, Reece managed to get off the ground and ran until he collapsed on a garden path in an effort to get help. Reece desperately knocked on house doors in the area where he could see lights switched on, pleading for help before he fell to the ground. All those houses he knocked at were left with blood marks. Among those who helped were Arshad Mahmoud and his friend Faifal Shah. Faifal had just returned home from the mosque and pulling up his car, he heard Reece shouting for help. Faifal could see that he was bleeding quite badly and he phoned an ambulance. Despite the best efforts of paramedics at the scene and doctors at the hospital, Reece tragically died around 2 hours after the attack. But before passing away, Reece was a hero. Under his last breaths, he gave out the names of the attackers to the people who tried to help him, Arshad and Faifal. So the police had the names of the attackers, but now they needed to find them and find out who they were because they were not in the police system. After checking Reece's phone, they soon made the connection after seeing his online activity on Snapchat and messages between him and the other boys. So they quickly discovered that the attackers were at the same high school as Reece. After contacting the school, they found out their addresses and went to arrest them at their homes. By the time they got to Mark's home, he had already handed himself into the police. The pathologist, Dr. Carter, concluded that Reece's cause of death was multiple stab wounds. 3 of the 6 stab wounds were so deep that they could each have caused death by themselves. These were the wounds to the left arm, top of the left shoulder and right side of the mid-back. The remaining 3 stab wounds were superficial. After the attack, James and Mark ran away from the scene. And right after the attack, James shared a video with the bloody knife he used in killing Reece on Snapchat. He hid the murder weapon in order to avoid detection. He then went home. He later told police that he hid a knife in the grassed area by a nearby brook, but despite a comprehensive search, this knife was never recovered.
So if you drive down to the bottom of Bishop's Road until you come to the bollards, my client may be able to assist from there on.
Because I don't picture everything at the time.
In fighting Reece, James was trying to boast and brag to his peer group on Snapchat about scoring a victory over him. He then sent a message to Mark Nuttall which said, quote, "I thought it only went through his coat, so I kept doing it. He's dead now," end of quote. Mark responded with a laughing emoji. Oh boy, oh boy. James also carried out a factory reset on his phone, thinking that he could cover up the incriminating Snapchat messages. After it became publicly known that Reece passed away, James told his mother that he stabbed him. That's when his mother and stepfather asked him to remove his clothing. They placed them in a black bag and took James to the police station. They also handed in the black bag. James was arrested at lunchtime on 4th of May 2021. Mark Nuttall, who ran away with James, went to his grandparents' home in order to avoid detection. After the attack, he tried to cover up evidence by deleting Snapchat messages from his phone. His grandparents sent him home, where he was arrested mid-afternoon on 4th of May. During the trial, Mark denied to the jury that he carried a knife on 4th of May. However, he did get a knife from James. Mark said he didn't kill Reece because he didn't stab him. Mark Nuttall was born on 24th of May 2006, and he also lived in Farnworth, Bolton, with his mother and stepfather. He was 14 years old at the time of the attack. Mark was immature for his age, and he was prone to peer pressure. He has a long documented history of being known to children's services and social care, having been subject to child protection measures due to significant neglect at a young age. He suffered serious and prolonged early childhood trauma, which affected him developmentally, emotionally, psychologically, and physically in some significant ways. His behavior over the past several years has been influenced by his upbringing, neglect, learned behaviors, and physical problems which he found extremely hard to deal with. He had a highly unstable upbringing. This is according to a forensic psychologist report. Dr. Van Lissen, the forensic psychologist, also interviewed Mark's father. His youth offender team officer assigned to him for the trial also made a report. She has been in regular contact with both of his parents since then, attending every day of the trial. Mark actually told the IOT officer that he carried knives out with him in the past. If he was meeting someone for a fight who was known for carrying weapons, he would also take one. He never said this to anyone else before, but the officer believed it could have been for bravado or perhaps his difficult childhood experiences and his PTSD. Boy A, James White, was charged with the murder of Reece Tansey, and he was sentenced at Her Majesty's pleasure, which would now be His Majesty. He was sentenced to a minimum of 15 years, but having spent 259 days on remand, he would be serving 14 years and 106 days in custody before he is eligible for parole. If he is released after 14 years, he will be on license for the rest of his life. Boy B, Mark Nuttall, was found not guilty of murder, but guilty of manslaughter. And this one is quite infuriating. Mark Nuttall was sentenced to 6 years in prison. He spent 259 days on remand, which will be taken off the time. He will serve up to 1/2 of his sentence in custody and the rest on license. So I think it's safe to say that he will be out in 3 years. Can you just believe this? So I'm asking myself again, I feel like I'm a broken record in all of these videos, but if you give these small sentences to teenagers after they commit a serious crime like this, then how will they ever learn? With 3 years in probably a youth facility. I'm not saying that a youth facility is so much better than prison, but still 3 years, 6 years, even 15 years, but 3 years, come on. He will be still very young when he gets released, and yet Reece lost his life and he will never have a future. Yet he will have a future, although I'm quite happy that the judge after the trial decided to release their names, because at the beginning, like I said, they were only known as Boy A and Boy B, but the judge decided that it's in the best interest of the public to just release the names, which is quite surprising, and I found it quite surprising myself when I started the research for this case, because in general here in the UK, especially when we are talking about underage children who are being convicted for serious crimes like murder, then usually their names are being protected to protect them from public outrage. Yes. Now, during the trial, Reece's family suffered the distress of watching CCTV footage which showed Reece running for his life, being stabbed repeatedly and collapsing in the residential street where he lay fatally injured. Reece's family also had to watch the Snapchat video made by James White, which showed the blade of the bloodied murder weapon with the words Tuesday, which was the day he murdered Reece, and Muppet, which was an insult designed to humiliate Reece. After the murder of Reece, his father, Ian, blamed his mother, Laura, for their son's death, telling her that she murdered their son. He had a confrontation with her when she was out with a friend for breakfast. He even took photos holding Reece's hand at his funeral, sharing it on WhatsApp, knowing that she will see, and he was even sharing intimate photos of her, and really he was just harassing her, calling her names, destroying her car, and eventually she had to report him and he went to court for this. Ian was made the subject to a community order for 1 year. He was ordered to attend 20 rehabilitation activity requirement days, and he was also placed on a curfew requiring him to remain at home between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. for 5 months. There was also a restraining order banning him from contacting Laura for 5 years. After the trial for Reece's murder, in a statement released through Greater Manchester Police, Mum Laura Tansey and Dad Ian Nice said, quote, "Reece was our 15-year-old son. He made us smile, he made us laugh, he made us tear our hair out at times, a typical teenage lad, but he was ours. Reece was fiercely protective of his mom and his little brother and saw himself as the man of the house. His dad saw him as his best friend. Reece was simply our world, and his death has devastated us beyond belief. When Reece was born, never did we imagine that in 15 short wonderful years later, his life would be taken in an act of violence that is beyond comprehension. Instead of planning his 16th birthday, preparing and guiding Reece into adulthood, we found ourselves preparing for Reece's funeral and having to explain to his little brother why Reece would never be coming home. Reece had his whole life ahead of him. He had so much to look forward to, so many memories to make. On that day, not only was Reece's life taken, but so was ours. The news that Reece had been killed simply drained the life from us, and we will never be the same again. We will never come to terms with the senselessness of it all. The pain is almost physical. Nothing will ever bring Reece back to us, but we ask that his death not be in vain. Let Reece's death and the circumstances surrounding it be used to educate young people about the consequences of carrying knives. We would like to thank the 2 men who came upon Reece that morning and came to his assistance for the reassurance they gave him when he was at the end of his life. For that, we are thankful. And with this, we got to the end of today's video. It really, truly is a very tragic case, a death that could have been prevented. And again, this is a prime example of how social media can affect teenagers and people in general, and again also how peer pressure can lead you to this kind of horrific crimes. And is very sad, but this is the reality. This is the reality nowadays. We have social media, we have peer pressure, we have teenagers who carry knives because they think it's cool, and it's just a recipe for disaster. It really is. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please do let me know what do you guys think in the comment section down below. Also, I do take case requests, so if you have any particular case that you want me to cover, just leave it in the comment section down below and I'll cover it for you. Again, thank you so much. Take care, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!